Hello everyone, Dark1 here. Today we've got a very interesting little theory for you guys. Now, if you have watched much of the ONI episode 1, then you're good for this video, but spoilers. So, yeah. Now, okay, the episodes apparently are going to be coming out pretty quick, or at least the next one is, so this could be disproved in literally the next episode. There are already 4, so this is kind of like halfway point already. I'm just going to throw this out there. Braggy is amazing at writing Ninjago. Now, no hate to the Hegmans. I love their work, right? There's nothing against them. However, if there's one thing I've always had a problem with how the Hegmans wrote Ninjago, and it only got worse, is they really didn't like balancing powers out and any sort of logical basis for those powers. Now, that's fine, okay? A lot of writers feel like the big flashy powers are just secondary to story, and that's true. But they are still an aspect in the narrative and need to be treated with respect. We have differing opinions, I suppose, so it's not a problem. They can think this way, but it just makes me really, really enjoy the way Braggy's been handling it in his episodes, and as well as this one. This is him only now. So, Spinjitzu, that's the point, is what I'm trying to say here. It's in the name, and so they kind of had to drag it along, the Hegmans. They had to bring it along the whole time. They added new powers, they got rid of old powers. You know, Tornado of Creation is the very big thing here. Wu was talking about it. This is my theory, okay? This is my entire base of the theory. Braggy gave highlight to the Tornado of Creation. It was a somewhat weird moment, because it's like, oh, the ninja don't think that was a very interesting thing to do. Like, that was the... Out of everything they did in pilots, that was the biggest event, and that was very, very important to the story. But it was handled as if they didn't care, and I think this is very intentional. I think what we're going to end up seeing is that Spinjitzu is the key to defeating the Oni. Now, I know this is a big statement, or at least the Tornado of Creation will be. I know that's pretty huge. Let me just run you through this. The Dragon's powers have been what they've been using since Season 4. Tournament of Elements introduced a whole cascade of characters that didn't have Spinjitzu, but knew how to use elemental powers. And this is where I think the last 2 seasons have really tried to drive home that the Dragons have a specific set of powers, and the Oni have a specific set of powers. Because the Ninja have been, well, the good guys, they have been using the good guy powers. Garmadon got the Oni powers, but he also had some other ones, and I think this is where we're going to see some more with the Oni. I think what's happening right now is the warlord of hatred has come to Ninjago. We'll get onto that maybe another day, maybe we won't know until a few episodes in. So let's say there are Dragon powers and Oni powers. The First Spinjitzu Master was, well, both. He had access to both, assumedly, and that's how he created Ninjago. He used 4 of the elements of Spinjitzu. It's always bugged me. Ever since they added new ones, why were those 4 the special ones? And I think it's rather, not that they are the definitive best ones, but rather the 4 he used, the 4 he had access to when he created Ninjago. So he quite literally used Spinjitzu and used the golden weapons to create the world with those 4 elements. And that makes a very interesting point here. What is Spinjitzu? Now, it's my personal theory, a bit separate to this, that golden power is the dragon power and the Oni power combined. And that's why only Lloyd could access it. Supposedly the other 2 could, but they were too lopsided on one or the other. Although, then again, balancing Ninjago has always been a bit confusing, because Lloyd is technically balanced when he is very much on the good guy side. It's not the whole Asian Buddhist style of balance, but rather the Western good versus evil. That's fine. However, one thing that needs to be stated here is that Spinjitzu has been useless for a good number of seasons, particularly. Not useless against, fodder. It's not been like it's been ruined, but it has been overshadowed, and this is one thing that the Hegmans really did a lot. They introduced some crazy power-up, and then they just used Spinjitzu, because it's in the name, because they had to use Spinjitzu, because that's where all the toy inspiration came from. And now, literally, we have the Spinjitzu Tornadoes as the sets, and so what better time than to actually give it some relevance again? And when I say that, I mean Spinjitzu will be the way to defeat the Oni. I don't think he would have called it out, unless it was. To be frank, I don't think that he would have set that up. He would have talked about that. He would have given Spinjitzu any sort of highlight, because we already understand how it works. It doesn't need to be given any more explanation. It's just what they do. So the fact that he has, it's somewhat of a reach, but I do think that the First Spinjitzu Master left it behind for the people from Ninjago to take in and to use. Why? Because he always knew the Oni were coming. Now this is another, the more, I guess, insane proportions this theory could be applied to. It's the fact that the Oni and the Dragons were once equals. They once fought each other equally. Now, we don't know what those battles entailed, because we only know from the hunters, we don't even know what they are, but assumedly they weren't back then. They just sort of showed up later, I assume. Maybe, I don't know. It's so confusing. But the dragons and the Oni were supposedly the only two in the realm. That's why it was called the Oni Dragon Realm. So they fought. Then the First Spinjitzu Master came along, and then he left the realm. That's important to note because the Oni then left, and they've come back and they've beaten the Firstborn. So the only thing I can assume here is that either the dragons have gotten weaker because the hunters were so easily able to take them out, or the Oni have gotten far, far stronger. It could be both. And the reason why I think this is relevant is because anyone can learn Spinjitzu. Misako and Doubloon both know Spinjitzu. They do not have any elemental powers to speak of, as well as Wu and Garmadon, although they technically do not represent a dragon element, but rather the balance as a whole. And this is very important because it proves to us that Spinjitzu isn't a dragon power, it's just a power. And this is where I believe that those two very flimsy little bits of element can come together, and with the whole idea that these Oni were, it was inevitable, and the marketing, it feels like they're pushing this as in, this was inevitable, this is always going to happen, and now they have to fight, and they have to use this power to defend Ninjago once and for all, I guess. I don't know. It's pretty wacky of a theory, not gonna act like it isn't, but I do think that Spinjitzu is going to be relevant in some way. Maybe they'll form another tornado of creation. At the very least, it might not work, but, you know, maybe I'm right.